Greetings, and I hope you're having a great day. This is section 2.5, chapter 2, section 5. We're talking about if-then statements. And not really a whole lot with numbers or shapes or anything like that going on in this lesson, okay? Just need to use some common sense, really, and a little bit of prior schema, meaning knowledge that you've used and learned in the past. You might see some words here that sound kind of familiar. So in this first example, we're talking about if-then statements. So if this happens, then something else is the result of that. If-then statements are split into two parts. You have a hypothesis, which we talk about right here. The hypothesis is the if part of the statement. So in this first example that that we see here, we just want to identify what is the hypothesis and what is the conclusion. So on letter A here, if I pass my driving test, then I will get my driver's license. Okay. If I pass my driving test, whoops, pen there. This is our hypothesis. Okay. And then the second part, if you look back over here in the vocabulary, is a conclusion, and that's the then part. Okay, so if I pass my driving test, well then obviously, then will get my license. All right. So another example could be, if I walk outside in the rain without an umbrella, then I'm going to get wet. Okay, you have a condition, and then you have a result. All right. So for the second one in letter B, if I sleep through my alarm, then I will miss the bus. And again, your hypothesis is the beginning part. If I sleep through my alarm, and then your conclusion, then I will miss the bus. All right, so the first part, the if part, is always going to be the hypothesis, and of course the last part, the conclusion, will be your then part. Okay, now in example 2, we simply want to write an if-then statement. So there's a phrase given to us in A: every game on my computer is fun to play. So we need to figure out, okay, if, and then we need to come up with a then. So if, let's zoom in a little bit. If you're thinking about this, if what? If there's a game on my computer. So if a game is on the computer, I'm going to abbreviate computer there. So if a game is on the computer, then what? Then we presume that it's fun to play. All right. So that's how we'd write that first one. And you just kind of take pieces of this phrase, okay? Game on my computer, and the reason that it's the if part in the beginning is because of the word every. So then we can just safely assume that, well, if every game's fun on your computer, that if it's on the computer, then it's going to be fun to play. And then fun to play would be your conclusion. Let's look at the next one. I will buy the CD if it costs less than $15. So think to yourself, if what? And I hope what you're thinking is right. If the CD costs less than $15, so if the CD cost, I'm going to use the less than symbol, less than $15, comma, always put a comma after the if statement. So if it costs less than $15, then I will buy it. Okay? And it seems simple. It's just common sense. There's been lots of times you probably think, well, if there's something you want to buy and if it's going to be 20 bucks or less, then I'm going to buy it. Okay? So you can see how we can come up with this if-then statement. Okay, now example 3, it's talking about using a law of detachment. Just basically, just use your brain here. Okay, so in A it says, if you wash your cotton t-shirt in hot water, then it will shrink. And if you had done laundry, you would understand what we're talking about. So now they're saying, so if you wash the t-shirt in hot water, it will shrink. The next statement says, you wash the cotton t-shirt in hot water. So what do we conclude from this? We wash it in hot water, then what's going to happen? Right. It was given to us in the if-then statement. So all we just simply, what do we conclude is that the t-shirt will shrink. That's it. All right. And this is like using the law of detachment. To me, it's kind of wordy. But that's what it's called. You just need to come up with a conclusion. So look at letter B here. All right. If you're late for an interview, you will probably not be offered the job. You're late for the interview. So what's a pretty safe assumption that's going to happen here? That's right. You're not going to get the job. So what can we conclude from this is you won't get the job. So don't be late for an interview, okay, guys? All right, that's the law of detachment. That is just using your head and common sense to come up with a conclusion. All right, now let's flip the page and look at the last one. Okay, so now we're talking about example 4. Basically, we're wanting to determine if these statements are going to be true or false. And if they're false, you need to prove why. Like, come up with a counterexample. So, for example, let's look at this first one. It says if two angles are vertical angles, remember vertical angles are angles made when you have two intersecting lines. So, like, these two guys would be vertical of each other, okay? And they're always going to be congruent. So, if two angles are vertical angles, then they are congruent, which is true, okay? Angles 1 and 2 are congruent. Therefore, angles 1 and 2 are vertical angles. Do you think that's true or false? I'm going to tell you it's false, and here's why. It just comes right out and says that angle 1 and 2 are congruent. Well, angle 1 and 2 could be two separate angles. They could be looking something like this. And they could be congruent, but they're not vertical. They're just two angles sitting there. All right, so that's a counterexample. What we just drew here, okay. Let's see here. This right here is a counterexample. Okay, it's proving why this is false. Okay. This first part's true, the if-then statement, that is true. If two angles are vertical, then they're congruent. They just said that angle 1 and 2 are congruent, and they're saying, well, then they must be vertical. Well, that's not true because they could just be sitting here side by side. Let's look at the second one. If two angles are vertical angles, then they are congruent. All right, that's the same thing we had before. But now they're saying angles 1 and 2 are vertical angles. Therefore, 1 and 2 are congruent. Well, this would be false in number 2, because if they are vertical angles, that means it's probably going to look something like this. Here's angle 1 and 2. They're vertical of each other, so they are going to be congruent according to what we've learned. So this statement is true. Okay? And that's all you're wanting to look at, is try to figure out a way, is there a possible way that we can come up with a counterexample like we did over here to prove that one of them's false. But it's all in how it's worded, and you really got to learn to read it slow and know the rules, know the conjectures and the laws and everything, okay? And you'll get the hang of it. It'll take a little time, but you'll catch on. Let's take a look at number 5. Okay, guys, example 5, this is where it gets tricky. Just kind of follow along and do the best we can here. And we'll get this cleaned up if you're a little confused or not sure, but just kind of follow with me. In A, it reads, if the daily high temperature is 32 degrees or less, not 4, I think or less, right there, just a typo, then the water in the pipes is frozen. If the water in the pipe is frozen, then the pipe will break. Okay, there's like 4 parts to this. All right, this is kind of how I look at it. So if the daily temperature, or if the daily high temperature is 32 degrees or less, okay, here's one section. Then the water in the pipe is frozen. There's another one. So there's the first 2 sections. If the water in the pipe is frozen, then the pipe will break. So I've broken this up into 4 separate parts, okay? I've got, basically, I guess you could kind of call it like I've got A, B, C, and D. All right. So now we want to come up with a statement that kind of concludes this. So what you do is you want to look for the parts that are like repeating themselves and take them out. Okay. So if you look here, what parts do you think are repeating? That's right. Right here where it says, then the water in the pipe is frozen, and then it says, if the water in the pipe is frozen. So B and C are both talking about water in the pipe being frozen. If we take that out, then we just have A and D left, and we can write an if-then statement that kind of concludes this situation. So we would say, if the daily high temperature, just write temp, is 32 degrees or less, then what will happen? The pipes will break. Then the pipes will break. You kind of see how that makes sense now? All right. They gave us some reasons to why the water or why the pipes will break. Well, because it gets frozen. So then we simply come with a conclusion using the A and the D part. Okay. So just like I said, look for the parts that are the same. Water's frozen in the pipes. Okay, we can get rid of that because it's not information we need to write this final statement, okay? Let's take a look at B. And again, as you read this, you want to kind of separate it. If Naomi saves enough money, break, she can buy, buy, I think, a concert ticket. There's another break. If she buys a concert ticket, break, then she can see her favorite band. Okay, so you got 4 parts. Again, here's A, here's B, here's C, and there's D. So what parts repeat themselves? And again, it's the B and C part. Okay, she can buy a concert ticket, and if she buys a concert ticket. So those 2 parts kind of repeat themselves. So now read A and D as an if-then statement to yourself. Okay, so we'd say, if Naomi saves enough money, then she can see her favorite band. And that makes sense. Because if she saves enough money, then the whole ticket thing can happen. But we can kind of just leave that part out and still come up with a conclusion, okay? So if we were writing this, we'd just say, if Naomi saves enough money, then she can see her favorite band. Okay, so that is this section. There's a lot going on there, a lot of writing. It's all words, okay? But, you know, in summary, I guess to wrap all this up, we would just talk about using if-then statements and deductive reasoning. I really don't even know how to word this. Try to maybe come up with your best, your best summary, okay, kind of as part as what you need to finish in the notes here. Just write something regarding about if-then statements and conclusions. Maybe just kind of sum things up. You could go back and look at the vocab on the first part as well. All right. Hopefully you're not too confused. If you are, contact your local educator. Have a great day.